From Chinese-made electronics to Italian olive oil and Brazilian coffee, exports to the U.S. have been hit with heavy tariffs that are so far-reaching they impact even staunch U.S. allies and places where there's no one to trade with.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time.
But few nations have been hit as hard as Vietnam. The Southeast Asian nation, like much of the world, was given a 90-day reprieve for individual countries to strike separate deals with the U.S. But the 46% tariff announced days earlier still hangs over Hanoi like an economic sword of Damocles. Can Vietnam, a country dependent on U.S. trade as well as Chinese investment, strike a balance between the two superpower rivals? Vietnam is an export-oriented economy, with such trade amounting to the equivalent of more than 87% of the country's GDP. The Vietnamese economy also relies heavily on the U.S., its largest export destination. Vietnam ran a trade surplus of $123.5 billion in 2024, mostly with exports of garments, plastic toys, and electronics. Its leadership is greatly invested in upgrading the bilateral relationship and has pushed to strengthen diplomatic and trade ties as recently as 2023.
I think it's a big shock for Vietnam because we used to believe that America is a reliable partner.
If the tariffs are implemented, it will be very challenging here. Many small and medium businesses would probably have to shutter. Larger manufacturing would continue to operate, but would have to quickly find new destinations for their product. That's all in the immediate term.
Yeah, even in case of the 10% tariff, it would mean that the GDP growth in Vietnam would be 1 percentage point less than expectation. So it's really damaging for the Vietnamese economy.
It was an unexpected outcome for a country that was by most measures a winner in Washington's last trade war with Beijing. In 2018, Trump fired the opening shots in what has become a protracted trade war with China, slamming the country with tariffs on a wide range of manufactured products. The move prompted many Chinese manufacturers to try and evade tariffs by moving to places they hoped would be shielded. Some moved as far away as Mexico, but many found a haven in neighboring Vietnam. The country had earned a reputation as a rising manufacturing base. In recent decades, manufacturers in Vietnam could produce goods for export at a lower cost. Mainland Chinese manufacturers rushed to set up shop in Vietnam, joining operations established by South Korean, Japanese, Taiwanese, and European firms. Many looked to the country's north, a region that had long lagged behind the south economically. Investments like these helped fuel the rise of what has become one of Southeast Asia's fastest-growing middle class. But now, Trump's full-scale trade war has workers and many others concerned about Vietnam's economic future.
Lo lắng là công ty sẽ cắt giảm bớt mọi thứ đi, là mình sẽ giảm các thứ về đồng lương cũng giảm, là sẽ không đáp ứng được cái nhu cầu sinh hoạt của mình so với như bây giờ các mặt hàng nó lên.
Why did the Trump administration target Vietnam with such a high tariff? It may have been due in part to Vietnam's recent success as a manufacturing base. Its exports to the U.S. have more than tripled since 2017. This surplus, made possible in part because of Trump's own policies, has now placed Vietnam in Washington's crosshairs.
The Trump administration is absolutely obsessed in trade in goods, right? Every bit of their calculation is based in trading goods. And what that fails to understand is that the United States has a very large surplus with Vietnam, but many other countries, in the trade and services. It also reflects a failure of understanding of just how complex the global economy is.
I don't think it would be easy for, let's say, Nike or Adidas moving, street shops in Vietnam with the salaries of workers only around like $300 per month and going to the US. And how would they find workers who are willing to work 10 or 12 hours per day with such a low salary?
But members of the Trump administration have accused Vietnam of helping to divert Chinese goods that were previously slammed by tariffs.
Meaningful volume of manufacturing capacity did move from China to Vietnam, as well as certain other countries. But what share of the total exports from Vietnam is represented by that? Modest.
One very reliable research from Harvard Business School stated that around 2% of those goods coming from Vietnam at the firm level can be classified as rerouting Chinese goods, or the maximum of that could be around like 16%.
To salvage its economy from potentially devastating tariffs, Vietnam has immediately sought to reach a deal with the Trump administration.
They responded more proactively than any other government in the region. They didn't say that they were going to impose punitive tariffs on American goods. What they did is they immediately announced a cut in U.S. tariffs. They had already imposed tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum because they knew that one of the problems that they had was the transshipment of Chinese goods through Vietnam to evade U.S. tariffs.
Vietnamese Party General Secretary To Lam proposes 0% tariff on American goods imported into Vietnam. Hanoi has also agreed to buy American weapons.
At the moment, I think any purchases of American products would be seen as something like a Vietnam's overture to the US to show that Vietnam actually has the goodwill to buy whatever it takes to please the Trump administration to relieve the tariff.
But while tariffs may pose a threat, they also present Vietnam with an opportunity to diversify its trading partners.
I think in the long term, Vietnam will try to diversify its trade partnership with other countries, especially China. Vietnam also trying to work with ASEAN member states in enhancing ASEAN position in negotiating with other trade partners, including Europe, India, and even China, to strengthen its trade resilience. So I think that's the only way for Vietnam to go ahead. But that's a long-term question.
The issue also affects the political legitimacy of the ruling Communist Party of Vietnam, which has promised economic prosperity to its citizens.
This presents also a very good opportunity for Vietnam to rethink about its growth model. And if the Communist Party of Vietnam can do that, it can actually rebuild another way to build its legitimacy among the population instead of just depending on exports and foreign direct investment.
The party pledged to turn the nation into a high-income country by 2045 if the nation can continue to maintain strong GDP growth. But if tariffs are implemented, that goal may be pushed further back.